got an issue with Curry just as a man.
Right. Yeah.
He's one of the most. He is. The only thing that makes him credible is that he admits he's seen it, but his story has changed up so much. But they need him to be a witness.
Because he saw it. That's my bottom line. That's why I don't look at him being foxy as a dude and all this stuff. The bottom line is he saw it.
He didn't stop it. What do you mean?
But I'm saying. When it came to court, when it came to him testifying,
he was faulty. Because first he was like,
because he saw it. And that's all it took. Is that he saw it, regardless if he did anything.
Then he said, "I slammed the locker." His story changed, and then he said in an email to a friend that got leaked out through the AP, "I told the police, but they didn't do anything. But there was no police report filed." Jerry Sandusky has a sorry-ass lawyer, because I would have roasted his ass.
Well, we saw that in the beginning.
I would have roasted his ass. I was like, your story's been so inconsistent.
That first interview with Bob Costas, I was like, dude, you making him sound guilty and guilty.
His lawyer, I think he's not all right either, you know what I mean? But it's very, I'm not giving anybody a pass on this, but at the end of the day, I think there's so much here that this will go so deep when you start pulling apart people just passing things over and passing the buck. I think parents were probably aware of things, and I hate to tell you this, people will turn their heads. I mean, I know I've seen kids that are being molested by other family members, and people just act like it's not going on. So think about this. If it's not someone you love and you care for, how do you process that? It's so easy for people to say, I will do this, but I guarantee you, it's not as easy as you think it is. Especially if you have somebody say, well, I heard that, so-and-so is doing this. You're like, well, what are you talking about? I heard. It's like telephone. I heard. Well, you must understand that Jerry's good with the kids. He's friendly. You know how he is. Because he set everybody up like that. He set people up to believe that. I mean, when they say he's got histrionic disorder, they didn't lie about that. He fits the profile.
So you like
we've been talking about it for months. Ever since it did die down a little bit, but when it came back hard. Like,
because it was court time.
It's like it's happening all over again. And even though I feel like I'm tired of talking about it, but because there's so many people that just want to argue the point that I feel is so wrong, and because it's in my nature to argue my point, I can't let it go. Like, what do you mean we shouldn't be looking at him? What do you mean he shouldn't be held accountable? Like,
absolutely should
everyone
be
held accountable.
Everyone should be held
accountable.
accountable.
And I'm not, and I think what a lot of people that I talk to are missing is I'm not saying that other people shouldn't be held accountable. I'm not saying put all the weight on Paterno. I'm saying he was involved.
We got Ron Santo. Well, we got to bring that up. Hall of Fame.
Him and Larkins.
Obviously, Cubs shopping around Dempster, Garza. Gosh, it'd be great if the Sox could pick either one of them up.
Man.
And off of last week's show, when Fruit was so excited for this matchup with the Tigers, and they
I've been trying to prepare for this. This tumble was going to happen. I kept preparing him for it, and it was dramatic too. It was a dramatic like. You get swept, you fall out first, you lose five.
Somebody hits their 300th home run, like.
And they were like, Sale hadn't given up a home run in 96 inning pitch, and Bosch had. It was just climactic.
Why we suck? Because you want to be on the Sox bandwagon. And then,
I'm ruining my rah-rah.
And then something happens and you're like, no.
Guys,
if you love sports, then you'll love Stats and Stilettos.
Since you referenced past precedent, though, let's go back to SMU. There are those who argue that the NCAA has its hands tied, and they really might not have, I'm trying to find the right word here, they might not be willing, I was going to say courage, I'm not going to say that, they might not be willing to come down with the death penalty in this case because they saw what happened to SMU. Some would argue that program was decimated and that Penn State and programs like it are too important to college athletics overall to see a program that historic and that great get decimated by this kind of rule. What say you to those persons who think that the NCAA already knows that it's not going to go that far?
Well, again, I don't want to prejudge where we're going to wind up with penalties, but right now is a very special moment in the history of the NCAA. There's an enormous amount of political courage, if you will, to do the right thing on a variety of cases, and we've been demonstrating that again and again in recent months. And so whatever penalty structure is put in place, again, if there's findings of violations of our rules, the decisions will not be based upon whether people want to be courageous or not.
That was Tavis Smiley and NCAA President Mark Emmert speaking earlier last week about the impending sanctions coming down on the Penn State University, coming up tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock when he will be speaking, Mark Emmert, about all of this stuff. Welcome to Stats and Stilettos, everybody. I'm Fruit Basir.
I'm Maya Gavin.
I am Ty Eileen.
And we'll be talking about that pretty much all night, but the majority of the first hour of the show will be covering Penn State, taking your calls on your thoughts about the Paterno statue coming down this morning and about what's all going to happen with the sanctions. They're probably going to get hit pretty hard over the head with this one, but we will see in the morning. The phone number here, if you would like to talk about any of these things, is 773-591-1690. You can listen online at WVON.com, iHeartRadio. The app, if you have it on your phone, go ahead and download it and take WVON with you wherever you go. You can also follow the show on Twitter at
Stilettos.
Yeah! Yeah! That's what I'm talking about. Man, I ain't have to train y'all for that.
You are so
lame. Okay.
And like the Facebook page as well. So a lot going on. Thanks to the staff, everybody, for showing up tonight. Alexis Wolford, Tamia Baker, Robert Chapman, my man D and Ken on the cameras here in the studio. And just everybody, thank you a lot. Let's get to this, though. Penn State, first, coming up at 9:20, by the way, we'll have a little brief Penn State intermission. We'll be talking about the AFC South with Zachary Kiefer from the Indianapolis Star. We'll be breaking down, giving a little mini preview of training camp coming up for the AFC South teams, the Colts, Texans, teams like that. So, but Penn State. So what are you guys thinking right now, ladies?
Well, we kind of segued into this conversation last week in saying that what was in the scope that the NCAA could do, obviously, to sanction the school, given the nature of this being, granted it happened with the football program, but it's something that goes above and beyond that. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of sanctions come down. People thought maybe, the football program would be suspended. It seems like that probably won't happen, but it'll be interesting to see what's going to end up being the punishment for the actions of a select few at the university. But as well as when we were talking about this in the pregame show, to me it goes beyond this. It's the state's attorney's office failed, the Second Mile organization failed. I said I think the rabbit hole goes a lot deeper than people even begin to realize with this. So granted, I think it's great that the NCAA is going to step up. You can remove Paterno's, his statue. Does that change the situation? No. Does it change that the victims their lives have been changed forever? No. Does it change his legacy? Absolutely. Is that what the goal is? I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about them? Let's start with that. How do you feel about them removing the statue from the campus?
Well, I've been saying that I felt like the statue needed to come down because in my mind, a statue represents a celebration of somebody. And even though, it's not going to take away from the wins that Paterno did have and the legacy that he did create. However, as of now, there's kind of like an asterisk next to his name in the history books. This was the cause of him having to leave Penn State. This was the end of his career. He didn't go out on top. Am I saying that Paterno is the only one to blame in this situation? No, which is what everyone seems to think I'm saying. But so I felt the statue should have came down before anybody really started talking about it. And before the heated debates got started on Facebook and Twitter, people asking me what I thought. But I do think the statue should remain somewhere on campus because it is a part of the university's history. But I don't believe it should be in front of the football stadium. For a lot of people, it does bring up old memories, whether, they were molested as a child or knew somebody that was, or if the victims are in the area. I just don't think it's something that should be out in the public, visible to everybody. And I don't think it should be the mascot of the stadium.
It's going to be interesting how that unfolds because you're right. It's an icon. It's something that people will see. And obviously there's always going to be that negativity that's tied to it. It's kind of like the Confederate flag. When you see it, you go, you really want to have the Confederate flag? It just kind of strikes a sore spot with certain people, especially if you happen to be from southern states. So I get what you're saying about how even though it's an image, it's something that will be difficult for people. At the same time, what I think is unfortunate about this entire situation, and we talked about this in pregame, is Joe Paterno doesn't get to step up and tell his side of the story. So we're going to be able to speculate, and we all know it's human nature to speculate on the negative side opposed to on the positive side. We even all had kind of admitted that we felt for probably the last 5 years that Joe Paterno wasn't the most lucid person in the world, that I think he suffered from Alzheimer's. I'm serious. When you would see him, he looked like he might have been drooling, and they wiped his lip and propped him up. You could barely understand what he was saying. I don't think he was really probably as cognizant about things later on as it started to unfold. And one of the things that I put out there, and I said, I feel that I can be an expert on this because I've had to deal with victims as well as predators. Jerry Sandusky put a lot of people in a bad situation because he groomed them to not know any better. Whenever someone's a predator, they take the people around them and they make them comfortable with their behavior. He was always hugging the kids. He was always kissing the kids. He did it in front of everybody. So it wasn't blatant when he put this in front of people. And like I asked people who sat in the room, if someone came to you with someone you've known your entire life and said, I think Maya is doing this, first you're gonna go through denial because you're like, I don't believe that. Maya works with the kids. I think you're misinterpreting what you think you see. So I think at least for a beginning portion of what happened, people probably weren't as aware. I think when the state's attorney's office investigated him and failed to really move forward, that's when the ball got dropped, and that's maybe where something else should have happened. I don't know what. That's why I don't feel like everything can roll back on him, because often people in Joe Paterno's age group, they don't process things the same way. If you know how your older grandparents, how many older people you've known said they were married for years and the relationships were abusive and they were bad, and they tell you stories and you say, well, why in God's name did you stay there? And they'll tell you, because that's what you did.
You stay.
You stay. You sweep things under the rug. And I'm not saying it's right, but I wouldn't be surprised at his state and his age if that's just how he processed the information. But he can't speak for himself,
Okay, with all that being said, though, so what was the reasoning behind him taking the statue down then? Was it just caving to the public pressure, or was it something where someone in the administration obviously believed that Paterno did something wrong for them to take the statue
down? It doesn't matter if you think it's right or wrong.
I feel like there was a lot of pressure coming down on them. It was something that had to be done because of the negativity behind it, because of it being associated with children being molested. The statue had to come down. It just did. But I have a quote that I saw earlier on TV. It's, according to a source, Sue Paterno, Joe Paterno's wife, she, according to a source, said, "Why do they want to humiliate this family? Jerry Sandusky got better treatment than Joe Paterno. At least Sandusky got a trial. He got to have a hearing, his day in court. He could challenge witnesses. He was given all those rights. Paterno has had nothing. This is the proverbial runaway train." To a certain extent, I have to agree. I mean, the man has passed away. But his family is still...
Of course, that's what they're going to say, but who really wants to hear that, though, when they're
you don't
thinking about
hear
the
it,
victims and all that stuff?
But you do have to think about it.
It doesn't...
Because
right,
he is not the person that actually was molesting the children. Am I allowing him a get-out-of-jail-free card? Not necessarily.
Right.
But the man is not here to defend himself, and his family is still here. They're taking the statue down. They took the statue down without telling the family first. They found out about it when the rest of us found out about it. So, they're essentially being dragged through the mud because their last name is Paterno, and he was their family member, and they love him, and it's an unfortunate situation, and they understand that. But at the same time, it's like he can't defend himself, and everybody is coming down harder, it seems like, on Paterno than Sandusky.
And everybody has the right to defend themselves. Like I said last week, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And unfortunately for him, he's never going to have the opportunity to speak on this. Everything gets to be an inference, and we all know people like to run away with things. I have always felt from the beginning of this investigation, it was more about Joe Paterno than it ever was about Jerry Sandusky.
How many years did he have to speak about this, y'all? Come on. He knew about this since when? 98, when everything first dropped on us. He had 14, 13, whatever years to say something about this.
I'm not taking away from that, but what I am saying is the point is that Paterno's family is all they're saying is he doesn't get his day in court, and he's not the person that was there firsthand. He heard about it. He wasn't the one that was in the locker room and supposedly either slammed a locker or saw him in the shower. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't be held accountable. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just agreeing a little bit with the wife, and all she's saying is everybody is turning all this attention on Paterno because he was the figurehead of the football team. He
was the most powerful man in the whole state.
But it is not. But
in the whole state, he was the most powerful person out there.
But what
so what you're ultimately trying to say, Farouk, is that it's Joe Paterno's fault?
No, it's not.
His fault that
he could have done a whole lot more than
he absolutely could have done a whole lot more. But why are we
possible the minimum?
But why are we not focusing on the person that was actually molesting the children?
He's going to jail for the rest of his life. They focused on him. All right, we have a caller. I'm Steve, who wants to talk about this as well. What's going on, Steve?
Hey, Steve.
Hey, how you doing? How's everybody doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I can't agree with her. That, I think Maya, who was talking at all, because the paternal family had since the 90s to defend him about what happened. He said nothing. You know, I don't see why they're crying now about he doesn't have his day in court because he's dead or something. You know, doesn't make any sense. They had plenty of time to explain themselves, bring Sandusky to justice, so to speak. You know, report him. They didn't do any of this. So I believe they deserve what they get now. And
Steve, nobody brought Jerry Sandusky to justice. When one of the victims' mother went to the Pennsylvania Child Welfare Protection Agency and reported inappropriate acts with her son, he was investigated by the state's attorney's office. At the end of the day, they determined, even though Sandusky admitted he had showered and had maybe inappropriate contact with a young boy, they said there was no grounds to prosecute him. And that was well before. So the state of Pennsylvania was aware of Sandusky's act. Joe Paterno wasn't the only person.
I'm just saying that's too bad for Sandusky. If the people governing people.
What do you mean it's too bad for Sandusky? It's not too bad for Sandusky.
I think he meant Paterno. Is that what you were saying, Steve?
I mean, Paterno, yeah. It's just too bad for him because they didn't acknowledge it. They didn't do anything, and he didn't speak over them and said, "You're wrong. My man did this, and I'm going to report it."
This gets back, but Steve, this gets back to secondhand information. When someone brings you something of someone that you have a relationship with for 30 plus years, like if you would have listened to what I said before, and I'm not saying this as, oh, I'm just kind of putting this out there. I am a crisis intervention specialist when I'm not acting like I'm a sports host on the radio. So I'm a person who has interviewed victims. I have interviewed predators. So I can say I'm an expert on this. The bottom line comes down to this. When he went to Curley and reported what was told to him secondhand, he was told it will be taken care of. At that point, he felt like he did what he was supposed to do. An investigation took place. They called him McQuarrie. All these different things happened. The bottom line is nobody did anything with it. How many?
Well, Maya, don't you think he should have stepped down so they wouldn't do nothing because so he wouldn't taint himself? Being invited,
I'm gonna ask you a question. If you have a coworker at your job that does something that puts your company in jeopardy, and you go to your boss and you tell them about it, and all of a sudden it becomes a federal investigation for whatever reason, are you gonna quit your job? Because your boss didn't do what they were supposed to do? Would you quit your job?
If I morally felt
would you quit your job? Yes or no?
I mean, it depends
based on somebody else? No. Yes or no? Are you quitting your job?
I would if I felt it was morally against my morals.
Okay, so you reported the information. You felt like you did what you were supposed to do, and your boss failed to continue and do what he was supposed to do. You're going to quit your job? You morally addressed the issue. You told your boss.
Money sometimes, Maya, is not, worth being morally wrong about something,
How is he morally wrong?
And one more thing, I'm not going to hold you, but one more thing. Those kids were just not Sandusky. He probably had a lot of those rich sponsors having liberties with those kids.
Thank you. That's something that's not being addressed either.
That's not being addressed.
Well, Steve, I agree with you.
I just think you're wrong on this.
No, I don't think I'm wrong. Because here's the problem, Steve. There is no right or wrong answer with this. This is a very gray situation because you're talking about a university. A university failed to do something. A state failed to do something. An agency. Here's the thing. There was a school district where the principal banned Sandusky for interacting with students because he saw inappropriate interactions twice. We're not talking about just Penn State that dropped the ball.
Thanks for the call, Steve.
It's a host of adults. So this isn't just about Joe Paterno, and that's why I want people to open up their eyes and see a whole lot of adults failed children. And I know that Joe Paterno is the one they're going to hang out to dry, but there's a whole lot of people right now who should not be able to sleep at night because they didn't do what they were supposed to do either. And that's what I want people to realize.
There's no right or wrong, I think, in both of these arguments that are kind of going on with us tonight. I feel like what you're saying has all kind of merit, but I feel like what Steve and what I are saying, I mean, it's all the same. I don't think it's you're right or he's right or anybody is wrong or anything. It's just all of these things have kind of conspired to create this major mess.
It's unfortunate, and you can weigh in your thoughts too. 773-591-1690 as well. Come on, bring it. Let's talk about it. But it all comes down to people keep saying what they would do, and I guarantee you it's not as simple as this is not an easy conversation for people to talk about. And it's just something that people know that it's wrong. They don't want it to happen. But if you look at people who don't protect their own children, and they're in this situation. Imagine if you're a bit removed from it and you haven't. It's kind of like that see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil kind of situation. If I turn away from it and I don't notice it, maybe it'll go away.
Well, I know for me, I can say that, had I heard about it secondhand, you're right. I'm not really sure how I would move forward. If it was somebody, I have two brothers. If somebody came to me and said, they think or they saw them behaving inappropriately towards children, I'm not really sure what my next step would be. I know eventually I would go and talk to my brother. However, if I saw it firsthand, I absolutely know what I would do.
I agree.
Like in that situation,
Yes.
I know without a shadow of a doubt
I agree.
that I would confront that person immediately.
Stats and Stilettos, WVON 1690.
Welcome back to Stats and Stilettos here on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. Farouk, Ty, Maya, all in the building. We'll also, coming up in the next hour, be talking about our little outing we had Friday night. So I'm sure everybody who wasn't there would like to hear about it and kind of check that out. But we're going to bring in Zachary Kiefer from the Indianapolis Star to help us preview the AFC South as we get it cracking with our second week of NFL divisional previews and stuff. Zachary, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you guys?
Pretty good. I want to ask you, man, before we get into the football stuff, I'm looking at the Colts website, and were you lucky enough to get into that cheerleader photo shoot?
I don't know why they didn't ask me to take part in it, to be honest.
Yeah,
you would start the interview with that kind of question.
It's right here in my face. I'm looking at it, and
hey, I can hardly blame them.
All right. Well, since you, like we said, do right for the Indianapolis Star, I guess we'll start there with the Colts, and also, them being significant. They have Andrew Luck, the number one pick in the draft. Talk about his adjustments so far in the offseason, what he's been doing to kind of get geared up for his rookie year.
In the limited amount of time we've been able to spend with Andrew and kind of watch minicamp back in June, obviously he got the late start because he was finishing up his graduate degree at Stanford. He's been very impressive. And it's not a regular season game and it's not the real NFL just quite yet, but from everything we've heard from the coaches and the scouts and everything, he's been everything they've wanted him to be so far. He's got an innate maturity about him. He's very impressive. He's very well spoken, and he's got a heck of an arm, and you can see that. It is the NFL, though. It's going to take him a little while to get used to things and the speed of the game and et cetera. But you got to like the tools that come in with a guy like that and the stature that comes along with it.
When you talk about, obviously, the Colts made a decision to clean the slate, not just with the departure of Peyton Manning. Obviously, they let go of Joseph Adai, Gary Brackett, Dallas Clark, Pierre Garçon, Jeff Saturday. When you talk about, literally, they just blew up everything, what new components are they putting in that's going to make them more competitive than they were last year?
It won't be hard to be more competitive than they were last year. They were just by far, in a way, the worst team in the NFL. It wasn't even close. They didn't win until week 14. Mm-hmm. So you got to think it's going to be better than that. But the funniest thing is Peyton Manning didn't play defense. They got beat by 31 points in the opener at Houston last year, and it's not because Peyton Manning wasn't, playing quarterback. There was a lot of problems that were exposed last year, and obviously the brunt of it got thrown on to Curtis Painter and the quarterback situation and not having Manning. But, they had linebackers out, they had safeties out, there's a lot of problems that came out, and they're going to be really, really, really young this year. We're talking a lot of rookies, a lot of first and second year guys, and these guys are talented. They've drafted pretty well. I like the pick at Fleener, playing tight end in the second round, but they're going to lose a lot of games this year. I don't think anyone has really, really high expectations for this team. I think 4 wins is about average expectation level around the city. If they win more than that, then it's all just gravy at that point.
I think Jim Irsay kind of set the stage for that, too. With the departure of Peyton Manning, he said out there that the team was rebuilding, not to have huge expectations. In regards to coaching, I always felt that when Jim Caldwell took over for Tony Dungy, that wasn't the best fit. And I kind of felt that coaching change was the beginning of their demise. How do you feel with a new coaching staff in place, they're going to be able to move forward with this younger team that they're assembling?
I wouldn't disagree with that. I feel like Jim Caldwell, a lot of us didn't know a lot about him when they brought him in to replace Dungy, although he was on the staff for a couple of years. It was the easy choice. Maybe it wasn't the best choice. Obviously it didn't work out. He won his first 14 games as a head coach, which a lot of guys can't say. If you all recall, they did throw away the perfect season in 2009. Then they lost the Super Bowl, and then things got worse from there. The move to Pagano makes a lot of sense because fans in Indianapolis wanted a defensive mind for so long, because the offense was always taken care of, because when you have a Peyton Manning, you don't even need an offensive coordinator, essentially, because he runs the show so much on his own. And so the move to the 3-4 defense under Chuck Pagano from the Ravens is a welcomed one in Indianapolis. It's not going to be a huge change right away in terms of, I'm not saying the Colts are going to jump in and have the best defense in the NFL or even the top 5, but, they're moving Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney to the linebacking spot, and that's going to take some time to get used to. They're trying to get bigger. For a lot of years, the defense was built on speed. We're talking about Bob Sanders and Gary Brackett, who was an undersized linebacker playing. That Tampa 2 defense that Tony Dungy kind of trademarked was built on speed. With Pagano, it's going to be totally different. It's going to take some time to get used to.
I was kind of surprised that they let Jeff Saturday go. I thought at least bringing in a new quarterback with Andrew Luck, you want to give him something that might be consistent to help him to make the adjustment to the NFL. Do you think if they would have kept Jeff Saturday, or do they have something in place that's going to kind of help Luck to grow into that position more at the NFL level?
Oh, they had nothing like Jeff Saturday in place, that's for sure. And he left as a free agent. I'm sure the Colts made an offer. It wasn't, they didn't want him to go. He wasn't one of the 4 players cut on that kind of Black Friday, we call it. But obviously they wanted to keep a veteran like Jeff Saturday. And know the offensive line is probably the second youngest unit on the team besides, just, I guess, Luck and the quarterbacks being completely redone. They're going to have a lot of growing pains as well. And there's no one on that line with more than 5 years of experience. And, it's going to be tough early on, and they know they need to keep Luck clean. They need to keep him up and mobile because, let's face it, if there was a franchise and he left last March, the new guy is Andrew Luck, and they need to keep him healthy more than anything.
So that leads me into my question. Considering the team is so young, how are fans going to be able to gauge whether or not the season was successful? Like, what should we be looking for to say they're rebuilding to something better as opposed to, they won 4 games this year?
It's funny because Colts fans were spoiled for so long. It was almost unfair. It was every year. They had won 12 games in a row for 7 or 8 years in a row and made the playoffs every year, won a Super Bowl, went to another one. So the expectations were so high every year. Fans expected them to win almost every game at home for sure. And there were the big ones against New England and Pittsburgh, obviously, that were the toss-ups. Now it's completely different. They want to see something from Luck, it wasn't Luck's call to get rid of Manning, but that was the idea. All along, whether Irsay will admit it or not. I don't know if he makes that move if Andrew Luck is not available. So they make this move to Andrew Luck, and right or wrong, they're gonna run with him for the next decade or more, and they need to see some potential. Maybe not wins. Everyone remembers Peyton Manning throwing all those interceptions. I think he threw 27 his rookie year. The Colts went 3-13. I don't think anyone wanted to run him out of town then because the next year they went 13-3 and won the division. But they want to see something out of Luck, and they want to see something out of these young tight ends they drafted in the 2nd, 3rd round as well.
All right, we're talking with Zachary Kiefer from the Indianapolis Star. Zach, I have one more Colts question. I know we're kind of hitting you with the Colts before we move on.
Hey, no worries. It's my expertise.
Okay. But there has to be some element of pressure considering what Cam Newton and even Andy Dalton getting his team to the playoffs as a rookie quarterback last year. Is there significant pressure you think that will be on Luck because of what happened with the rookie class last year?
Absolutely. That's a good mention, not just Cam Newton because he's, just a one of a million kind of athlete, but Andy Dalton leading the team to the playoffs and winning those games and basically making the Bengals not really be tied to Carson Palmer like they once thought they were. There's going to be pressure for Luck, absolutely. He is the number 1 pick. He signed his deal this week, and obviously the easy comparisons are it's the same deal as Cam Newton got, for the most part. And there's gonna be the comparisons not only to those guys, not only to Andy Dalton and Cam Newton and Sam Bradford and Matthew Stafford in their first year, but everyone's going to be comparing him to Peyton Manning as well. It's not fair, but it's just the nature of the job that he's in.
All right, I want to talk Houston Texans now. They seem like they were real similar to the Chicago Bears here in our town last year. They were on a great roll, and then their quarterback got hurt. And they were sort of finished, even though they got to the playoffs and actually won a game in the playoffs. So and played Baltimore pretty tough in the 2nd round. So What are they looking at this year with Matt Schaub and kind of all their weapons back?
That's a good comparison. You know, two strong-arm quarterbacks and both going down, color hurting the Bears and Schaub with the Texans.
What you laughing at? Hold on, Zach. What are you laughing at over here, Ty? What's
I'm
so
sorry.
funny about that?
I'm not trying to interrupt. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Zach. Continue, please.
It's funny because it's really the tide has really turned. It is the Texans' division to lose, absolutely. With that offense, with the rushing game of Arian Foster, I think they were second in the league last year in total rushes. And then with Matt Schaub and Andre Johnson, if they're healthy the whole time, who knows what they can do? They should be right up there with Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and New England in the AFC. And there's no excuse for them not to make it even to the championship or to the Super Bowl.
And this is also a contract year as well for Schaub, but they've had some things that they are kind of tweaking at the time, especially with their offensive line. They did actually see some departures on their line, which is going to change a little bit of the protection that he's going to be getting. You got Aaron Winston is gone, Mario Williams is gone. So they have had some changes, at least into the O-line. I think that may affect overall how productive they're going to be offensively. I mean, I know people don't like to talk about the O-line. It's not sexy, but we are, as being in Chicago and seeing the Bears and knowing how important O-line is, that might be something that might be an issue down the road for them.
It might not be sexy, but it wins games, and a lot of football coaches would agree with that. That's what they learned last year. They learned it the hard way. I mean, as tough as they played Baltimore with T.J. Yates as their quarterback, imagine what they could have done with Schaub and Johnson, let alone if they were healthy the whole year and they were able to build that chemistry. I mean, Johnson is just, beyond Calvin Johnson, he's just absolutely unguardable. And if you put a healthy quarterback in there like Schaub, they can get him the ball. It just changes the game, and that's what they're trying to do with the O-line. They're trying to keep Schaub healthy and just run teams out of the building with their passing game.
How do you think Wade Phillips does, obviously, in doing a follow-up from last year? Do you think he's going to be able to kind of have them better than what they did defensively last year?
First of all, he did a tremendous job. I mean, they did lose Mario Williams to Buffalo, which is a huge loss. I remember just a couple games, he was just tremendous before he got hurt. But Wade Phillips is one of those guys that's just a great football coach, maybe not a great head coach, but when he gets a defense, you saw what he did. I mean, Houston, 10-6, they not only got into the playoffs for the first time as a franchise since they became the Texans, they won a game too, and they didn't even have their stud quarterback. So I think a lot of that was him turning the defense around, getting them to believe in their defense, and they get a lot of young talent, especially in the secondary.
Now, with Andre Johnson, obviously he missed 9 games last year with the hamstring injury. He had to have his knee scoped in the offseason. If he fails to not come back to Pro Bowl form, do they have another kind of wide receiver within the team that's going to be able to pick up the slack with that?
No. and they have talent, but, I mean, do you replace a guy like that? Absolutely not. He stretches the field. Like I said, I mean, these 5'9" cornerbacks, and going up against a 6'5" Andre Johnson, he's unguardable. I mean, you run the slant all day, and you just can't stop him. I mean, the Texans, their ceiling is second round of the playoffs like they reached last year without Andre Johnson or Schaub healthy. I mean, if they're going to beat Baltimore and New England and Pittsburgh, they're going to play at those places for the most part in the playoffs. They got to have him. It's just as simple as that in my eyes.
Okay. All right, Zach. To me, the Tennessee Titans are like the Utah Jazz of the NFL. They're kind of nondescript. There's nothing really exciting about them. I mean, they have Chris Johnson, but they don't really do anything that stands out. But yet they always find themselves in the mix for the playoffs. So is that going to be kind of different any time this year, you think?
I don't think it's going to be. To be honest, I really agree with your analogy. I mean, they're 9-7 last year, and I looked that up earlier today, and that kind of surprised me. I mean, if you look at Tennessee, I don't see a great football team. They've got Hassel back, and they've got along Jake Locker waiting in the wings, kind of. I mean, look at their rushing yards. They've got Chris Johnson after the holdout last year. He finally signed, and then where'd they end up in rushing yards last year? 31st in the league, and that's after he went 1,000 yards. It's just kind of proving that teams can't rely on one running back anymore, and it's just not, it's not the 1990s. It's the era of the quarterback, and the running backs kind of fill in when needed. But without a stud quarterback, you're really not going to do that much damage. And I think Tennessee is a good example. Hasselbeck's, he's good, he's steady, he's solid, but there's nothing extraordinary about him, and they just kind of hit their ceiling, and they don't go much further past that many years.
What about with Cortland Finnegan obviously departing from the team? Are they going to lose a little bit of their aggression on defense, or do you think they'll be able to compensate for that?
I would agree. Have you seen that guy? I mean, he is nuts in the field. He will get in fights with just about any other opposing player, and I think he gave them a lot. And they won a lot of years. They won a lot of games, a lot of years because they had great coaching staffs. I feel like Jeff Fisher did a great job there for a long time, and Mike Munchak last year as well in his first year. I mean, they're going to be better, but I really think without that, game-changing quarterback / offensive threat. Besides Chris Johnson, he can only do so much. I think the Titans really are they're just a couple pieces shy of jumping past Houston in the division.
Okay. Yeah, I think, for me personally, if I only did my job 48% of the time, I'm pretty sure I would get fired. And that was the case with their wide receiver, Damian Williams. He only caught 48% of his passes, but yet, I feel like that's
only.
Yeah, right. So if I could go to work and do 48% of my job and, still get a significant paycheck, that'd be fabulous.
I agree on both counts, but that's the nature of it. And they had, Kenny Britt got arrested over the weekend or late last week.
Let's not talk about NFL players that have been arrested.
Is he a star, Zach? Is he seen as a star amongst some of the league writers and everything like that, Kenny Britt, or is he a star in the making?
I don't think so. No.
Zach, when you think about with the NFL kind of having this trend with young quarterbacks, I mean, obviously you've got Luck in Indianapolis, you've got Griffin with the Redskins. Obviously, all eyes are still on what's going on in different places. Do you think Locker is going to be able to step up and really take hold? And do you think they're going to have faith to let him just do it, since there tends to be a lot of teams with young quarterbacks right now?
They need to. I mean, whether it's right or wrong, they need to find that out quickly. I feel like teams are making this jump too quickly. I don't know if Ryan Tannehill was worth the number 8th overall pick in this year's draft. And teams are trying to find the next young quarterback that's going to step in and be able to play right away. A la Matthew Stafford, Sam Bradford. Granted, those guys were number 1 overall, but you see what Dalton did last year, and he was not a top 10 pick. And then, there's the Joe Flacco's of the world who came out of Delaware and hasn't, has been in the playoffs every single year. I think there's a big push for that. And obviously Tennessee, traded up. And Jacksonville did the same thing for Blaine Gabbert, and they traded up, and they kind of make this guy the next future quarterback. Whether he is or not, we have yet to see, but you got to give him a chance. You got to let him get out there and play. And it's a huge gamble. I mean, first-round picks on a quarterback, you better be sure. And I think that's why the Colts feel so good about what they did, because, I mean, with all the accounts taken in, Andrew Luck was a sure thing, as sure as it gets. But with these other guys, it was a bit of a leap then, and we're going to have to find out one way or another whether these guys are for real or not.
All right, quickly, we're all assuming that Jacksonville is probably going to bring up the rear in this division. You spoke of Blaine Gabbert.
I don't know about that. I would think Indianapolis would.
I don't know about that. Well, that kind of leads me to the question I was going to ask you, because if Gabbert is going to play, I got to believe they'll finish last. I was going to ask you, is Henne definitely the starter? They have him projected. They didn't just bring him in just to work behind Gabbert, did they?
Yeah, he'll play, and like you said, it'll be a toss-up between which team is the brings up the bottom of the division. You gotta like Jacksonville because they have Maurice Jones-Drew. He's in the contract dispute right now, which is obviously not good for them. But if you just look at his numbers, he's just an incredible game changer. I mean, he really just carries them. And I think he's a difference maker. I think he's the best player on either Jacksonville or Indianapolis.
But Zach, you kind of just said a little bit earlier, when it comes to running backs, it's to a point where I'm not going to say they're a dime a dozen, but you usually can find a replacement. And if we're already talking about the Jaguars kind of competing with the Colts to not be at the bottom of the division, perhaps this is not where they want to spend the dollars, and they're really evaluating it, that maybe it's not worth the money. We got to look towards the future. Where can we get better? Running back is probably not the most critical position that you're looking to recruit or fill. Would you agree with that at all?
I would agree with that, absolutely. And look at it. I mean, who are the best running backs in the league right now? MJD is right there, and Chris Johnson. And where are their teams finish? I mean, 9-7, 5-12, whatever. I mean, who are the best teams in the league last year? Green Bay went 15-1. They had the best quarterback. New Orleans went 13-3. They had Drew Brees set the all-time passing record, and then obviously, you had Manning and Brady in the Super Bowl. I think teams are understanding that, and there are running backs that are better than others, obviously, and that's always going to be that way. But you're not seeing a lot of max contracts with running backs anymore.
You were making a comment about Drew Brees before we had to go to break.
I was. Oh, yeah. I was talking about quarterbacks, and that was my example was just, Ray Rice just signed an extension with the Ravens, and compare the money between Drew Brees and Ray Rice, and that just tells you what kind of league it is. It's a quarterback-driven league, and as good as running backs are, like Chris Johnson and Maurice Jones-Drew, teams build themselves around quarterbacks, and obviously that's what the Saints are doing. So I think that's why the ceiling with the Jaguars is a little bit lower than it is with a team like the Saints or some of the others I mentioned earlier.
And, Drew Brees really benefited from when he went to mediation about being tagged for the third time, about was he now eligible for those monies. So clearly that paid into quite the lucrative contract that he got. And that was actually a big ruling that people don't, probably didn't think about. They were probably thinking if you were franchised, 3 times by the same team, they could be avoided. But it turned out that if you're tagged 3 times, it doesn't matter what team it is, you're going to have to pay the money. So that was a big ruling that I don't think anybody really thought about until this Brees contract came to be. I want to ask you a quick question about, it's out now, obviously, that everyone knew that the NFL officials went into a lockout. I think June 3rd is when it started. And now it comes out that the NFL is training their replacement because they have not put in place a new CBA. And they pretty much went to their training officials and said, hey, we need your laptops and you won't have access because we need that for the people we're training. How much do you think, one, do you think they're going to be able to get this rectified at least before the season starts? Because the regular officials, like 121 of them, are still doing their training to prepare for when they do come back. Do you really think this is going to go into the regular season for the NFL?
I think it'll go into the preseason, and then I think the panic will set in, and I think we'll get the regular referees back. But I think it was Ed Hockley last week, that made an interesting point. He said, if you bring in these replacement referees, the players will not respect them like they do ours. I mean, these players have relationship with the referees. They come to recognize a couple of them, and there is that respect. If a guy like Ed Hockley has done the league for 20 years. And if you bring in these replacement guys, it's going to be a different ball game, and it's going to be a differently called ball game. And there's a lot of questionable calls. There's a lot of 50-50 pass interference, no calls that happen. And fans, as fans' relationship with the referees, are they being what it is? I think that'll have an effect, and I think there'll be a little bit of an uproar and people wanting these regular referees back.
What was interesting is when I read the article about this. The NFLRA, because everybody in the NFL has their association, the referee association, said they're pretty much what they're looking for would cost all the 32 teams each $100,000 per year to meet their proposal. The NFL countered that and said, hey, what we have on the table right now is that a 5-year official at the NFL level would make $115,000 in his 5th year. By 5 years later, $183,000. This is a part-time job. So I looked at those numbers and I said, maybe I'm just being the average Joe, but to get $183,000 for a part-time job to do something that I love, and most referees do something else, I'm like, really, that's a lot of money. Or maybe I'm just being...
That's a good point.
I'm being narrow-minded.
And it's also a good point you made. These are part-time jobs. Some of these guys are lawyers, and some of these guys are basketball referees, and they make equal money on the side for doing that. And like you said, it is a job they love, and it's what gets you go through the action besides being an actual player. I could live off $150,000 a year. I don't know about you guys, but I could definitely live off that, or even half that. So
it's like when you look at that kind of money that they're making for imagine your part-time job. You make your 5th year $115,000. That's not bad.
Yeah, and it's not just 16. It's not just 16 Sundays a year. I mean, you travel,
right?
And there's a lot of preparation, a lot of work that goes into it. I actually did a story about a referee a couple of years ago. This is a college level referee, but I mean, it's a 12, 14-hour Saturday plus you're driving, all day Friday and Sunday, and you miss your kids and you miss your family, but you're right there. I mean, you're right there in the middle of all the action, and not a bad salary, I would say.
All right, Zach, we appreciate you joining us again here on Stats and Stilettos, and be looking for another call from us around the time of that opener, man, with Indianapolis coming to town.
Hey, anytime. Let me know, guys. I'd be happy to do it.
All right, thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Zach.
Bye.
That's Zachary Kiefer from the Indianapolis Star giving us the good word on the AFC South. All right, let's do headlines then.
Headlines. Headlines.
Extra, extra, read all about it in the papers.
Headlines.
All right, well, there's a lot of places we can start. I guess, you know what? I think we should start with the Bulls. Because while I applaud them on the one side for, not holding on to crap.
We talked about this last
week.
week.
We talked about that last week. But some of the stuff they're doing this past week is
You want to start with the video?
It's mind-boggling. The video.
And they're doing
video.
and that's nothing but propaganda, by the way. We want to try to ease the conscience of fans, let you know that the chosen one will be back.
Well, I was going to ask you what you thought about that, because it's a video of him standing somewhere where there's clearly basketball going on in the background. He's standing in a corner with his backpack on. So it's not like we saw him, lifting weights or, in rehab. We saw him in a corner, which he could have been sitting down, other than the fact he was swaying back and forth. So I'll give him that. But, I mean, it was nice to see him. I think that was the whole point of it, was we haven't seen Derrick Rose. Well, he hurt his knee, and then he disappeared.
I want to be the devil's advocate for both of you. I'm going to say Derrick Rose. I'm just going to pick a couple of players, and you tell me who you take, because Farouk made me do this one with the whole running back situation. Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook.
Derrick Rose.
I'm just giving names.
Derrick Rose.
Who you pick?
Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose, Kevin Durant.
Hey! I don't think it's fair to compare different positions.
Wait, stop. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why we're going to do it, because we are in a NBA league now where teams design their style of play around different positions. It's just the reality of how the league is. So if you're building around a team, are you building around?
Obviously,
Derrick
Kevin
Rose,
Durant is a better player.
Is
what I'm saying. But what you can't compare.
I didn't have to think about it. It was Durant for me.
No, I didn't have to think about it either. But what I'm saying is, it's not fair to compare different positions, particularly in the NBA.
Did you hear what
I hear you.
Did you hear what I just said?
I hear you.
We are now in an NBA league where they build the core of their team around players' talent base, and it doesn't really matter about position anymore. Do you think that someone cared that LeBron James is, not a point guard? No. So here's my question. Derrick Rose, LeBron James.
Oh, wow.
Hey, don't be mad. Hey, come on.
Seriously.
Come on.
Oh, Derrick.
Now,
LeBron,
are we only judging off of
court? On court, who you build your team around. I'm asking for the stretch and the endurance and the ability to bring you a title. I know it hurts. It hurts, don't it?
This one kind of hurts. This one kind of hurts for me.
Sometimes it hurts. You can love somebody, but you just can't be with them. I'm sorry. That's just.
Let's do some quick baseball before we take this break. I was getting teased.
Wait.
Start Cubs first. We're gonna do Cubs first.
Why are you starting it quick? Oh, okay. Well, if you're gonna start,
because I think this is noteworthy that we should say.
He's trying to roll over.
No. We'll give it more time then. Fine. I can talk baseball all day.
No. I think, but we should start with saying that Ron Santo inducted too.
Oh, the Hall of Fame.
I think that's.
Congratulations.
I think that's worthy of kind of starting out the note. And
they did it kind of bogus though. Wait until he died to do it. I don't like that. Why did they wait? Because they could have put him in way earlier than us, considering that he had better numbers than a lot of guys that are playing now in a non-steroid era when he played. I think he should have been in, regardless of what the media thinks about him, which is stupid. I hate the whole baseball Hall of Fame voting thing where because the media doesn't like you, then you have to. It's dumb. They should take it away from them, though. Let somebody else do it. Get another system. You got computers doing everything else. Let the computers do the Hall of Fame voting. That's dumb because people let their personal vendettas get in the way of acknowledging someone's outstanding career achievements. You know what I mean?
I agree with you, but are letting the computers decide the system?
Yes. They should develop a criteria to where if you did this, and that, then the computer puts you together your numbers, and if you meet that criteria, you're in the Hall of Fame, and then you have your ceremony after 5 years.
But being in the Hall of Fame it's more than just statistically what you did. It's the body of your work, Farouk.
That's what I mean. The body of your work on the field.
But that means not just statistically. It's like how were you in the clubhouse?
But not if you weren't nice to the media. That's what held him out.
I'm just saying. But he's there now. It doesn't matter when it happened. He's there. Jeez, you just can't make people happy.
You don't gotta kiss. Why you gotta kiss a bunch of writers' butts to get in the Hall of Fame when you had this great career on the field? It's about on the field.
Who's gonna write about you when you do great things?
But I'm saying that's why you think
who's gonna tell the story when you do these great things?
They got all these racist people in the Hall of Fame now. Guys like Ty Cobb in there. You think he put up great numbers and all this stuff? It's crazy.
Okay. I find this hilarious on a sports show because if you after a game had to interview players and the player was always a butthead, would you still talk about him on the air or write about him in your column?
Because my job is to cover sports. My job is not to kiss somebody's ass or have my ass kissed.
Well, okay then.
All right. Tell him why you mad, son.
I said, what's the best sports show in radio?
I don't know. I really don't know.
It's Stats and Stilettos, of course.
Welcome back to Stats and Stilettos with Ty, Maya, and Farouk. Leaving with a little baseball talk. That clip never gets old to me anyway, but Farouk, I feel like, is trying to brush over his beloved White Sox because last week he was like, oh, I'm so excited about the Tigers. And here we are.
Well, look, I've been trying to prepare Farouk for this for weeks. I mean, look at it this way. You can't stay in first place forever. The White Sox got into first place May 29th, was in there for obviously lots of weeks. And if you're a White Sox fan, what you can say about this, which is great, is this is the first season in a long time they started out strong and maintained it through the duration. So there is an upside to this. But I think what you saw in that Boston series was just they didn't pitch well, the offense wasn't there, they just didn't have a good series there, and unfortunately that momentum followed them right into Detroit.
That last game in Boston killed them for this little stretch that they're in now, because I believe that this too shall pass. Mm-hmm. They'll be fine. They'll be back in first.
You know why, Farouk?
Soon.
Because you are that fan that is ride or die. And I love that about you.
Yeah.
They can do no wrong.
The White Sox can do no wrong. But I feel like that game, that Thursday game, I think our rookie manager lost that one for us.
I keep saying this every week, the pitching is really a concern.
But the pitching was fine in that game.
No, but I'm just saying,
yeah.
But it's going to be something down the stretch that's going to become a bigger concern, because with Gavin Floyd having to go back on the DL because of the tendonitis, I don't feel that you can really at this point rely on him and Danks to be available through the duration. Now, what might end up being an interesting situation is all the talk obviously was them acquiring Brett Myers for the bullpen. You may see Brett Myers, as we talked about in the pregame for the show, in a starting role, opposed to having to put Axelrod up there, which is just never
awful,
and never a good start.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Myers does have some starting pitching experience. He may have to be put into that rotation to compensate for not having Floyd and Danks, because you can't rely on PV and Sale for every single win, even though Quintana has given way more than I expected.
He's been outstanding.
You know, so if nothing else, you know, for a team that you thought was kind of old and lumbering through it all, they do have a certain amount of youth, more youth than I would have anticipated. You know, in the bullpen, I mean, they got younger outfield. It was a bad series in Boston. Everything came apart in Detroit.
All right, let's do our tip of the week.
Ladies, it's time for the Sports Chick tip of the week.
All right. I thought long and hard about what the tip today would be. And the tip today is, ladies, sometimes understanding sports means you also have to understand what it means to be a fan. And sometimes being a fan means you need to understand what it means to go to the sports bar. The sports bar is where you can watch, I don't know, sometimes 10 games at a time, sit in a room with, you know, other people that are rooting either for the same team you're rooting for or they're rooting for the opposing team. You have a good drink, you sit in there, you go back and forth with people. But not only that, if you're trying to learn about sports, it's a great place to learn about sports. It's almost like a class on sports. You'll hear terms, you'll see different types of plays. And not only that, but you get to be, you know, my favorite thing about sports is being the fan and being in it and being amongst the people. So I feel like that's something that more women should embrace. And I think a lot of the times they don't go because they associate it with, you know, beer and I don't know, peanut shells on the floor. And I'm probably the wrong person to say that because I enjoy a good beer. However, ladies, you don't have to drink beer at a sports bar. You can order a cocktail, you can order a glass of wine, but maybe you should also learn to enjoy beer. There's so many different beers out there. I mean, it's endless. Right now, there's a beer that tastes like lemonade to me, so you can try that.
Spoken like a true alcoholic.
Why gotta be? Well, it's tasty. It's like beer met lemonade, and they had a baby. And it's fabulous in the summertime.
Thanks to everybody for listening tonight and tuning in. Thanks to Zach Kiefer from the Indianapolis Star for tuning in tonight, for joining us tonight and breaking down that AFC South with us. Thank you to our staff, Alexis Wolford, Tamia, the aforementioned Tamia Baker, And Robert Chapman in there in studio. My man D, my man Ken on the cameras in here. Thanks to everybody for listening. We will check you guys next week. Peace.
Peace out.